So now that we are in CODAP, the first thing we are going to do is remove this map box as well as remove this text box because we will not be using those features today. So this graph here we are going to turn into average salaries per region. So I'm going to title it Average Salaries per Region. And now we are going to add a y-axis and an x-axis. So our y-axis is going to be the census region, and our x-axis is going to be the average salary. All right, now that we have our x and y axes, we are going to click on this ruler tool and select mean as well as box plot. Okay. So now that we've created this graph, we can answer question 1, which is based on the average teacher salaries for states in the South and the West, where would you prefer to teach and why? So we are going to look at the mean of the South and the West because that will be the average salary for that region. So the mean for the South is about 50,000, whereas the mean for the West is about 53,000. So we can see that the mean salary for the West is higher than the South. The mean salary in the West is about $3,000 more than in the South. Let's also look at the median for both the South and the West. So the median for the South is about 48,000, whereas the median in the West is about 52,000. The median salary, which is the middle salary in the West, is also larger than the middle salary in the South. Now let's look at the lower salaries for each of these regions. The lower salaries in the South are about 42,000, whereas in the West, they are about 44,000. So here we can also see that the South has lower salaries than the West has. This data is consistent in showing that based on average salary per region only, that the West would have better pay than the South. Strictly based on salary, I would say I would rather work in the West, but I want to look at additional working conditions to decide if I would prefer to teach in the South or the West. In order to do this, we are going to create 2 more graphs to help decide where I would prefer to teach. So how to make a new graph, you come up here, you select graph. All right, and we're going to move it and adjust it to the size that we want. Now that we have it, we are going to title it, and this one is going to be titled Students per Teacher per Region. All right, now that we have that titled, we are going to add our x and y axes. So our y is going to be students per teacher, and our x is going to be census region. All right, and then we're going to use the ruler tool again, and this time we are only selecting box plot. All right, now we're going to create 1 more graph, so we'll go back up here to select graph, move and adjust it to where we want it and the size we want. This one is going to be named number of teachers per region. All right, now we're going to add our x and y axes. So our y is going to be number of teachers, and our x is going to be census region again. And we're going to go back and use our ruler tool and select box plot again. All right, now that we have created these graphs, we can answer question 2, which is exploring other quantitative attributes in this data set and compare the distributions for the South and West. Based on the data you have examined, in which region do states seem to have good teaching conditions in their schools? So we're going to start with this graph, and we are going to look at the highest and lowest numbers of students per teacher for both the South and the West. So in the South, the lowest student per teacher is 12.3, and in the West, it is 12.4, so pretty similar. Here we can see that the lowest numbers of students in both regions are very similar. However, the highest numbers have a bigger gap. So let's look. The highest number in the South is 16.5 students per teacher, whereas the highest in the West is 22.5 students per teacher. So the highest number of students per teacher in the West is much larger than in the South. This is demonstrated well by the graph because you can see the big difference in height between the box plots. See, this one's much shorter and this one's much taller. This addresses the range of students per teacher in the two regions. Now we're going to look at the median number of students per teacher, which is the middle amount represented in the box plot. So the median amount of students per teacher in the South is 15.2, whereas the median of students per teacher in the West is 17.9. So the median in the South is lower than the median in the West. So in the South, the amount of students per teacher is lower than in the West. Now we're going to look at the next graph that we have already created. So we are going to look at the highest and lowest number of teachers for both the South and the West as well. So the lowest number of teachers in the South is around 6,000, and the highest is about 334,000. So now if we look at the number of teachers in the West, the lowest is about 7,000, and the highest is about 292,000. So here we can see that the South has a broader range of numbers of teachers than the West does. The West is more clustered towards the bottom of the graph, showing lower numbers of teachers per state. As you can see, there's a big cluster down here and then an outlier up there. This addresses the range of the number of teachers in the two regions. So now we are going to look at the median number of teachers in each region. Again, this is the middle amount represented in the box plot. So the median in the South is about 46,000, whereas the median in the West is about 26,000. The median number of teachers in the South is much higher than in the West, meaning there would be more teachers and more teaching positions available in the South than in the West. Based on these quantitative attributes, I would say I would prefer to teach in the South. I think the states in the South have better teaching conditions than the states in the West. In the South, there would be more teachers you could build a community with, and there would also be a broader range of teaching positions available. Also, the southern states have a smaller student-to-teacher ratio, which I prefer. Overall, I would prefer to work in the South rather than the West. I know statistically, teaching in the West would be better based on the higher average salary, but personally, I would prefer to teach in the South because of the better working conditions. Therefore, even though the salary is higher in the West, I would prefer to teach in the South based on the workplace conditions that I discussed.